This is the Living in Mid-Bloom podcast, lighthearted and heartfelt conversations about what it looks like to live, heal, and blossom in middle age. I'm your host, April Pruitt. Let's get our bloom on. In this episode, I talk about emotional difficulties and lack of self-care. Please do not listen if you believe any of these subjects may trigger you. The content of this episode is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. As always, seek guidance from your healthcare professional. Hi, mid-bloomers. Hope everyone is doing well today. I am excited to be interviewing a very interesting woman. Her name is Michelle Hill. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, April. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing excellently. I'm so surprised it's so warm for October.
Really? That's right. Where are you? In North Carolina?
I am in North Carolina, and it is a warm day, over 80.
Ugh. Oh.
Yeah.
No, we've got real fall weather here in St. Louis. It's like in the 50s.
Oh, I love that.
Yes. Leaves are falling. I love it. It's my favorite time of the year.
Me too. I just wish it were 50 here as well.
Right. Well, Michelle, right now you are a book and publishing consultant. I know you're a ghostwriter for pro athletes. You've written a couple of children's books, and you're a Toastmaster, and you participate in panels of various topics. And you've got a book that's going to be released next month on November 16th. It's called The Heart Swindler: Reclaim Your Heart and Stop Falling for Liars, Losers, and Lunatics, which sounds fascinating. And my first thought is, did this happen to you?
Twice.
Okay.
It has happened to me. Once when I was first divorced in the early 2000s for money, and then the second one more recently I think for emotional manipulation. See, I don't know, maybe if it would have continued, it only had a 2-month shelf life because I knew what to look for. And something in my spirit was not settled from almost the beginning. So so I know what I'm talking about when I talk about heart swindlers, romance scams, and narcissistic abuse. And I am a self-proclaimed, I have that personality that just attracts that type of person. And they usually go for women who are kind and nurturing and caring and,
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth, because this is interesting. The person that's going to be on my first episode for the second season, her name is Petra Van Dale, and she is a life coach, and she focuses on narcissistic and emotional abuse. So the same language that you're talking right now is what she was talking about. So it'll be interesting if you have a chance to listen to the interview. I'm doing part 1 and part 2 on the next couple of weeks.
Oh, I will. That is of great interest to me. And it's all comes under the umbrella of relationship deception.
Yes.
No matter if it's for money. And I just recently watched a Tinder swindler on Netflix. That was incredible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, because I've had narcissistic people in my family, and I asked her the question, I said, what do I do to attract these? And she said, well, it's not like there's something wrong with you, but like you said, someone is kind and trusting. They're assuming that they're like you and that they're showing their true selves, and they're absolutely not. So
absolutely, you just nailed it. It's just like, and we're not tooting our own horn when we say kind and nurturing and caring.
Exactly.
We are at our core, and we are very trusting by nature.
And people find that as a weakness.
They do very often, most often.
And that's a shame. That's a shame.
No, it's just learning the signs, when we know that we attract those kind of people because it's something in them that's missing. that they're attracted because they will never have those traits. And so it's just
Yeah.
for us, it's not being anybody else than who we are. It's just knowing what to look for.
Yeah. And then once you realize it, because, with regard to family, these are people that I love. And you realize that maybe that relationship will have to end because they won't let you change it. It's either going to continue as it is or you're going to have to get out.
Yes, it's their way or the highway.
Yeah. Yeah. Not fun. So right now, I'm just so impressed by the people you've been in contact, whether it's a professional athlete or the coaches. Just name a few so people can go, oh, wow, oh, that's cool.
Yes. And when you say ghostwriter, I say I'm a recovering ghostwriter because I did
Okay.
that for 6 years and
Oh,
it
okay.
started sucking the life out of me. And so that's
Yeah.
when I discovered my sweet spot of, oh, I love to coordinate projects. And that's what I do. So I have ghostwriters on my team now. They love what they do. And I'm so glad because I never want to do that again. So
Yeah, that
that's,
would be a lot of all on them. You're taking everything in that. And you seem like a more of an empath. So that's stressful.
yeah,
That's
absolutely. So
stressful.
yeah, but I've interviewed now not for a book, but I've interviewed
Right.
Tony Dorsett, the famed cowboy running back from
Right. Right.
yesteryear. Just it was an out of body experience because of he's so iconic, and he just remembered Cowboys plays from with precision
Oh,
from the
wow.
80s, and that was really really great.
Well,
And
you were doing interviews as another position prior to the book stuff, but that's something you
mhm,
were involved in with interviewing these
I
folks.
love to interview people, yes. And so being on the other side of it
Right.
is different for me, but I love that too. But I've, John Nyland, the former cowboy,
Dick Butkus.
Dick Butkus, Mike Haynes from 49ers, Dr. Bennett Amalu from that got
Wow.
the movie Concussion with Will Smith.
Oh, yeah.
And it was so cool to hear him
Wow.
on the phone saying, like when Will Smith in the movie does, just tell the truth, in that accent. I heard Dr. Bennett Amalu on the phone, and he's talking about another book that he was doing. And he's saying, he's trying to reveal the high school athlete and keep your kids out of football, basically because of
Wow.
the concussion and the aftermath of that. But he was saying,
Yeah.
just tell the truth. And it was just like watching the
Wow.
movie. It was, again, very surreal to be talking to somebody that,
That's
uh,
fantastic.
in my world,
Right. Right.
hearing that
Right.
accent, and it showed me what a great job Will Smith did in the movie. But
Wow.
Dan Reeves, who has gone on, since the interview, but I've interviewed him. So yeah, I've done a
Cool.
few.
Very cool.
These guys are just so down to earth.
Everybody wants to be listened to. When I think about the books you've worked on with them, how they really have to trust you at a certain level when they're sharing their truth.
Yes,
And
and those interviews were for a sports related website that somebody was doing. So I was the interviewer and they would connect me with those. So those were connected with that, not connected with books, just so people, you know,
sure, sure.
yeah, get that. But for
Right.
books, yeah, I had a former Philadelphia Eagle that said exactly what you just said. He just said, I haven't told these things even to my wife. And he had been married for, or is married for over 30 years. And he goes, I
Wow.
just feel comfortable with you. And that is the supreme uh,
Compliment.
compliment to me is just, he had some hotshot ghostwriter in California. And he goes, I don't feel comfortable with him. I feel comfortable. And they can feel comfortable with me because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, they can feel your energy and know that
Yeah.
you're sincere.
Yeah, and I'm real. What you see is what you get, and
Right.
so that is very complimentary. He's still in the do I want to do my book or not? I think I
Mm-hmm.
do, and just
Mm-hmm.
if people are writing their own books, they don't realize until they're in it how much work it is and how much of yourself you have to pour onto the pages.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I'm working on a memoir And yeah,
You know.
oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like touching that today. I can't, but it's
Yeah,
also catharsis and
it
all of
is.
those things. But
It
then there
is.
are times when I just like, oh, let's just pretend nothing ever happened.
Yes, you
Oh,
have to really pour yourself out onto every page, and you
yeah,
have to bring up memories and as you're writing, other memories come up, new memories that, oh, wow,
yeah,
I
right,
didn't remember that until now.
right,
Yeah, it's
right.
quite an experience, and it takes a
Yes,
lot of time, as you're probably finding out.
yes. I was thinking, oh, it'll take me about 6 months and then I'll do, but then it was like, what am I talking about? It's, you don't just write. It just doesn't
Mhm.
work that way.
Yeah, well,
Well,
I tell people to write with your heart and just edit later with your brain.
hmm
Because if
hmm
you start editing and your inner critic gets mixed in with the writing part, sometimes the story
hmm
will end up being real and authentic because you're judging yourself as you're writing.
you're right, because there are a lot of times, and I've always been told, just write it. You can edit later. Don't worry about. I really struggle with that. I struggle with the editing, but I'm like, April, it doesn't mean it's going in, but put it out there. Just
Yes.
put it out there, and then you can go back and figure it out. So,
Yeah, and a developmental editor can really be helpful in that arena because they can read it from a totally outside view and they can say, "Oh, you said this on this page and then this on this page and there's kind of similar stories and this could go
okay,
in better order," and they can really make sense of your story and put it in a good readable form.
that's cool. That makes sense. You do. You need a lot of eyes looking at different aspects of it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's work. How did you get started with the book aspect? When did you write your first book? And then my thought is, how did she get caught up in the sports field? So as I'm throwing all this at you, I guess I'm really just looking for a little background on, were you in a different career prior to interviewing the sports figures, and what were you doing prior to that, and how was it growing up? So I throw you can you can start anywhere you want, but one question is, are you from North Carolina?
Absolutely not. And I
Okay.
know how to talk North
Ah,
Carolinian, but no, I've kind of learned Southern talk.
gotcha.
And I can pull it out when I want to, but no, I'm originally from Southern California and born
Oh,
in
okay.
Inglewood and raised
Okay.
in Orange County when it
Oh,
was a
wow.
baby when nothing else was there. So I was raised there. And because of, I think, family dysfunction and I had a very critical mother. And so I
Mm,
spent a lot of time in my room growing up because it was a safe haven for me to escape.
mm.
Now we look like my parents used to call us a good, a wholesome, all American family, but we were anything but that. But on the
Okay.
outside, oh, great. We did go on
Right.
family vacations every year. We did do some things, but I spent a lot of time in my room. But I consider that now as such a blessing because that's where my love of reading and writing, I would just write. And I had an old Royal manual typewriter that
Oh
my
my
dad had
gosh.
had. And that's where I learned to type. And so, you have to have hardy fingers. You have to tap
Oh
those,
my gosh.
you
Yeah.
know.
Working
So
on calluses. Were you
exactly.
were you an only child?
No, I had a younger sister who was perfect.
Oh, okay.
Yes, according to perception. But I
Mm.
I was the older one, but I was perceived as the dumb one. I was perceived as the weak one. And I would, the perception and the family hierarchy of
It gets
dynamic,
complicated, doesn't it?
it gets
What's the age difference between you and your sister?
just 2 years.
Okay.
But yeah, but I caused my mother 2 days of hard labor and she came out in 15 minutes. And I think in my mother's brain that just set. the trajectory of perception and treatment. But I
Blame for being born.
scapegoat, I was a scapegoat child, or I felt like that. So now I consider that such a blessing because, people call me stubborn, but to me, it can be
Yeah,
perceived like that.
stubborn just sounds like you're doing what you need to do for yourself, you
I said
know?
I had to be headstrong to survive in my family structure. So, yes, I am headstrong. Yes, I'll just say that.
Well, and saying stubborn makes it sound like a negative, and it's not. In my
It's
book,
not
it's
really a
not.
negative. No,
No.
it's a positive because I had to be that way to
Survive.
survive. And now, I mean, it just continues. So, yes, I have very definite opinions. I said, no, I don't like that. No, I'm not going to do that. Yes, I'll consider that. No, I will not go in that direction. That's perception again, but I'm so blessed because that made me strong and
Yeah.
it developed my writing and it developed my imagination. I would spend hours and hours in my room reading all the classic books. And
Oh,
I think
wow.
that ultimately prepared me to write, and
Did
to
you?
be in the book.
Mhm. Did you guys have your own bedrooms?
We did. We did.
Okay.
Hallelujah. Thank God for that because I am very precise, very ultra organized, and just methodical. And, my sister wasn't like that. And
Okay.
so I'm that way naturally.
So, were you into sports as you were growing up?
Well,
I'm
I couldn't play sports for the life of me. I was underdeveloped and just not, I was not talented at sports whatsoever. But
okay.
when I was in high school, I was in the living room at my grandparents' house with all the menfolk of the family watching NFL football, watching
Oh,
fight Foreman and Liston
oh,
and
wow.
boxing. Yes, I'm that old. I love them. I love watching sports. And so that grew my love of sports. And when I started my business, I was like, what's going to be who do I want as a target market? And I naturally gravitated to
Wow.
NFL, mostly NBA. And I just printed out lists of all NFL teams, all NBA teams, and I just went on LinkedIn A to Z on those teams and just connected with people. And I love the mentality of a,
Wow.
a lot of these guys were told, you're too slow, you're too small, you're too short, you're too this or that. And I was told that all my life. So I think it resonated that you were told that, yet look what field you are on. Look what
Right.
stage you're on now. And so
Right.
I think there was a connection there. I can talk football, I can talk
Well,
NFL.
exactly.
Yeah.
Did you go to college after high school or?
I tell people, see these books behind me? I have a PhD in life experience from the School of
Absolutely.
Art Books. And
There you
that's
go.
and
There you
reading all
go.
I am a reader, and that's where my education. I read a lot of self-help books, a lot of motivational books, a lot of how-to books.
Mhm.
I'm reading Dr.
Mhm.
John Deloney's "Own Your Past, Change Your Future" book.
Mhm.
Listen to
Mhm.
him every single day, and
Yeah.
that's where my education has come from.
When did you, I guess I'm trying to see, you said you went on LinkedIn one day. Was that like several years ago, or was it after high school that, I'm just trying to fill in the gaps of from that to,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
a big gap. So right at 20 years old, I got married. And I
Oh,
was
wow.
married 23 years. I was a stay-at-home mom.
Oh my gosh. Let
Yes.
me just say, I have never, ever wanted to be married. That just sounds horrible to me, but that's, wow.
That's what I was groomed. I was told you're not smart, so you better find a man to take care of you. And so,
Oh,
but ironically, in that statement, I am really good at keeping a house. I love cooking, cleaning up, keeping a house clean and tidy, doing all the paperwork. I'm
Well,
naturally good at
that takes skill. I'm sorry, it takes skill and work, honestly.
it. But I loved it. But that's what I did for 23 years.
Okay.
I had a daughter in 81 and a son in 84. And so my kids are 42 and 39. And I've been divorced this year as long as I was married, 23 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
Was
And
it a healthy marriage, do you think?
no,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Okay. What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say that I got
Oh
married to
gosh.
get away from my parents and the overbearing, the controlling, all that,
Well,
and
and the negativity.
negativity. And it wasn't all bad. All 23 years were not all bad, but
Right.
I didn't know
Yes.
who I was. At 20 years old, never had
Yeah.
been to college, so I didn't know who I was. And I was like, I'm staying until, I mean,
Yeah.
it's till death do you part. So
Right.
when he decided it was over and he went on, I was like sick the whole first year. I didn't know how to be single. I had never been single. And so
And on your own
on my
completely.
own,
Yeah.
never been on my own. So I cried that whole first year. I was sick constantly the whole first year. And
Yeah.
then I read, books like Boundaries, books like Women Who Try Too Hard, Changes That Heal. And
Yeah.
after that,
Just trying to find a way
yeah.
to be where you were. Yeah.
And it
That's
was, again, and I think the theme is blessing because it was ultimately the best thing that ever happened to me. In that
mhm.
once I healed and once I found out who I am, I ended up like, I like who I am as a person.
That's great.
Always under construction, always room
Right.
for improvement, always.
Right.
But
Right.
now at 66 years old, I love life and I'm so
Awesome.
thankful.
Awesome. You said a year or so after the end of your marriage that you fell in love with someone that was not a kind human
Yeah.
being.
Well, it was a few years after, I would say,
Okay.
less than a handful of years afterward. And I decided to go online, see
Yeah.
what's out there, get some,
Yep.
date for the first time, really. And
Yeah.
so I met somebody online.
In part two of my interview with Michelle, she shares her encounters with men who are scammers and fraudsters, and she's written a book about her experience as well as others who have been victims. Thank you for joining me today on Living in Midbloom. I hope you found this episode insightful, meaningful, and maybe it's given you something to think about. I invite you to share your positive reviews or ideas on topics you would like me to touch on by leaving your comments on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. We are all divine beings who just want to be seen, heard, and loved. Have a beautiful day.